Rahman Rahim. Let us go from the food to what we were doing. We are, as you remember, in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, and I don't have to remind you that what we are after the lessons that we learn from each story. And we learn several lessons from the story of Yusuf. The main one is the hazards of preferential treatments, then the fact of jealousy that is existing in life, the hope even at moments of despair that was demonstrated in how the divine intervention from the very bottom of the well caused him to go to different realms of empowerment and success, to the trial of affluence when he was in the palace, and then the trial of resisting temptation when the lady of the palace tried to tempt him and to lure him into something that's not appropriate, and how he resisted that in spite of his desires, and how this came back on him as being a subject of persecution, because the only way to clear the name of that lady is to make him the guilty party. So the decision was to put him in jail. We will go to the next slide, because this is where we knew from last time that the decision was لَنَسْجُنَنَّهُ حَتَّى حِينٍ. We'll put him for some time in jail. And for some time means that they are just putting him in jail until the dust settles down and the name of the woman is cleared, or her dignity at least is preserved. But nonetheless, they were aware and convinced that he is not guilty of trying to violate her, which was the claim. Here we will find another scene of that series, if you will, the scene inside the prison. The Quran told us about two people who were imprisoned with him. The Bible tells us about those two people in terms of their jobs, but the Quran did not. However, the story in the Bible is not contradicting the story in the Quran. It is just simply said that one of them was the bread maker for the palace, the one who bakes the bread, and the other one was kind of the waiter who offers the drinks to the master of the house. The Quran just said دخل معه السجن فتيان. Two young people, two youth were with him in jail, and what happened is the reputation of Yusuf as a person who can interpret the symbolism or the expectations in dreams preceded him to jail. So they knew that he has this special knowledge, and it seems that he demonstrated that on simple things, like telling them what the jail will serve tomorrow for meals or things like that. For whatever reason, they felt that he is a credible resource for that kind of information. They saw a dream, and without going into details, one of them saw that he is preparing, squeezing juice to make it wine, and the other one saw a dream that he is carrying food on something on his head, and the birds are eating from him. And they ask him, نبئنا بتأويله إن نراك من المحسنين. Let us explain to us what this means, because we know that you have that knowledge. Muhsinin here means that you are the one who is mastering this kind of knowledge, of this kind of skill. And he responds to them, telling them that I will give you from what my Lord taught me. So he is already trying to sneak in and to preach the idea of Lord and God to those people. Then he goes to teach them more about religion. And this is the lesson that is of interest to us, that even in a predicament, even at a very disadvantageous situation, even in a limited field as limited as being thrown in jail, this doesn't mean that the believer should quit doing his job. Even under these dire circumstances, he started teaching them about religion, about Islam as Islam was these days, that stage of the development of Islam. So he tells them, I deserted the way or the religion of people who don't believe in Allah and who deny the day of judgment. وَهُمْ كَافِرُونَ. They are bent on denying this kind of truth. This is a profound lesson, I hope, to all of us, because sometimes we feel that to work for what you believe in is something that you do when everything is nice and dandy, when the stage is completely prepared, when you are at ease, so you can afford to work for religion or to spread religion or to call people for the truth. The story here is showing us otherwise. In each place, under each circumstances, there is a way for the true believer, whose this thing is mixed with his or her blood and just settling in the heart and commanding life. There is a chance to do that, even in a situation like that. So we find him without hesitation telling them, I left the religion of people who don't believe in Allah, وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ, and they don't believe in the day of judgment. So in that jail, he is teaching them about deity, about the divine, and about accountability, about the day of judgment. Let's go to the next one. He goes further. I follow the religion of my forefathers, Ibrahim, وإسحاق, Isaiah, ويعقوب, Jacob. ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء. We cannot associate anything with Allah. ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس. This is a blessing bestowed by Allah upon us and upon people, to see God in their life, to realize God, to believe in that supreme power that has no partners and no associates. This is a blessing that Allah bestowed upon us, but unfortunately the majority of people are not grateful, are not thankful for such a job. So we see in these few sentences how Yusuf take us into a totally wider and higher realm. He transcended the very difficulty that he is at, to go to wider horizons and to try to invoke and spread and educate the word of God. And to whom? It's not on the greatest podium on the nation. It is not on CNN or Fox News. It is just with my very cellmates. Nothing can be more humbling than that. And we will see that this had far-reaching consequences. We all talk to each other a lot, and sometimes we say something that indicates that we did not really capture the lessons. Sometimes we feel, what is the use? We cannot change anything. We don't have access to the media. Media is controlled by others. We don't have a chance to go to the Congress. It doesn't matter. Do what you can do with what you have. All what he had is a cell in a jail with 2 inmates. This did not prevent him from preaching the message to those 2 inmates, and guess what? Because of that, horrendous things are about to happen. This is something for us to ponder a lot. There is nothing called, I am taking time off until things improve. Because guess what? Things will not improve unless you work with what you have, with the very limited situation you are at, and do what you are supposed to do, and you can never tell what tomorrow will bring. But to shut yourself out and to shoot yourself in the foot before you even start, this will keep us where we are. So anyways, Yusuf here taught those people and talked to him about something, and of course the Quran is giving us a snapshot. He is with them in jail. He definitely talked more and more and more, and I'm sure he answered the questions, and I'm sure he debated issues, because what else you do in jail anyways? You talk or you go crazy. Those are the 2 choices. This is why one of the severest punishments and the torture actually is to put a person in solitary confinement. This is devastating to the psychology and to the mentality of a person, because the human being is a communicating being. خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. Allah created the human and taught him to express. If you are expressing nothing to nobody, after some time something will happen. Depends on the length of the time, of course. Let's go to the next. He's still talking to them. Ya sahibai as-sijn. You, my friends, my comrades, my companions in jail. All my 2 companions in prison. You notice here the language of companionship, of camaraderie, of friendship here. So he is developing a rapport with those marginalized, imprisoned, indicted people. He's their friend. And there is no way you communicate with people unless you befriend the people. Any talking down to people or just giving people the words of wisdom from a condescending attitude or separating yourself from people is useless. So he talks to them, all my 2 friends in jail. What would be better? Several gods like they are doing outside this cell, outside this prison, or Allah al-Wahid al-Qahhar, the one who is one and have the power that's imposing over everything else. What you worship other than him, إِلَّا أَسْمَاءٌ سَمَّيْتُمُوهَا أَنْتُمْ وَآبَاؤُكُمْ. And this is very interesting. You created definitions and you believed them. You created these gods, and you created them by giving them definitions, names. But who gave them the authority? What authority these gods have? These are something that you made in your mind and the mind of your forefathers, and so you believed them. ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان, it has no authentic authority whatsoever. So he is really stimulating their minds to think. If you don't worship the Supreme One that is totally omnipotent and independent and in commandship, absolutely, anything else, it is a God that you made. Whether this God was an idol, was a statue, was a person, was a family, was a desire, was a power, it doesn't matter. But you idealized them. You made them gods. This is asma'un sammaytumuha, you and your forefathers. And the problem usually when you look to our life is how we make what our forefathers said, how we make it holy. Lots of things we are giving them great holiness just because our grandparents were doing, or our ancestors, or our traditions in the countries we came from. And I, in my humble experience, dealing with different Muslims coming from different places, I found that the traditions we brought are more commanding upon us than the Quran and the teaching of the Prophet. I leave this puzzle with you to think about. That sometimes what we are used to is more respected by us, more revered by us than what the Quran says. And the time is short, although I can give so many examples. I find it easy to pick up on Egyptians because I am safe. I will not be biased against them anyways, although they don't believe so, but anyways. We have a saying, several times we try to raise fund for the mosque or whatever. Still don't pay money. Wallahi, things are tight now, and I need to do the money because I'm building a new house. Right? Okay, you can still. And they quote this quotation, and it usually to them, it finishes, which means what your house needs becomes a haram to give to the mosque. I'm sure it will be in Persian. I'm sure if we dig, we'll find it in Urdu and in Turkish, because it is a very nice excuse to be stingy. But the problem is not in the logic. The problem is that really this saying is held in great esteem. That actually good people with good heart, they believe in it to the point that really when I finish building my house and I get the marble from whatever and the chandelier from whatever, I'll pay you. Because it is already drilled deep in them that what your house needs becomes a haram for the Jama'ah, which is idiotic. While the Quran says, Jahidu bi amwalikum wa anfusikum. You say, Quran says that, man. Quran, I'm telling you Quran, and you tell me this mambo jabbo, where did you get it from? No, you know, it is well known. And so when he says, antum wa aba'ukum, he is hitting a nerve. And in every time, the main stumbling block of a change is, this is not what we are used to, which means this is not what our parents or grandparents or great-great-grandparents told us to do. Muhammad was confronted by that. All people of revivalism and reform are confronted by that. And the reference, the line of reference is whether it is encouraged or taught by the Quran or not. It is whether we are used to it or not. And once you do something that people are not used to, they start being very skeptical about it, and not skeptical in being neutral to try to know the truth. No, skeptical to try to prove you wrong. They start by trying to prove you wrong. And you have to prove to them, if you can, that you are not wrong, and this usually takes a long time. And sometimes it comes in things that are very, very obvious. Like a woman reciting the Quran. Some people, we are not used to that. So when you get a woman on the podium to recite the Quran, the woman herself are intimidated like you can never believe. Because the other day, the lady who recited the most beautiful recitation I heard in the Islamic Center, she was refusing. She said, and guess what she said? She said, I know that the policy of the center does not approve that. It is so ingrained. I told her, at least in my age, don't talk to me about the policy of the center. I know it. No, there is nothing like that. At least in this center, maybe in other places. But anyways, the point is clear that he is trying to stimulate their thinking. You try to find on your own what makes more sense. Not the things that you named, you and your fathers. I am calling you for Allah al-Wahid al-Qahar. In al-hukmu illa lillah. Every commandship, every decision is with Allah. Amara alla ta'budu illa iyyah. He commanded and ordered that you worship none but Him. ذلك الدين القيم. This is the precious, straightforward, worthy religion or way of life. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. However, most of the people are not aware of that. So we found here a great lesson given in a dark cell of a jail in Egypt somewhere to two inmates. The result of this lesson is, number one, that statement was immortalized in the Quran. Generations after generations for 1400 years are reciting these verses and learning and inspired by them. That's the result. The other results, of course, in the very destiny and the fate of Yusuf and the people will result from that very, very narrow, limited situation also. Let's go to the next one. Again, Ya Sahibai Sijn, all my two companions of prison, one of you will offer a drink to his lord, to the master. The other one will be sentenced to death and will be crucified. قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ الَّذِي فِيهِ تَسْتَفْتِيَانِ. This is all what I can tell you. It is a done deal. Okay, let us see what will happen. And the one that he thought will go out and will be very close to the king and will offer him a drink, he told him, اذكرني عند ربك. Remind them about me. It seems that I am forgotten here. This is a sense that people get when they are thrown in jails, especially not for a sentence. When you put someone in jail and you say you are sentenced to 5 years, to 7 years, to whatever, he is much better off than one you put there and you say we'll put you here for some time. Because he doesn't know. He cannot, great defensive mechanism is to adjust. Tell me I'll be here for 5 years, I'll adjust. I'll adapt myself and psych myself into staying here for 5 years. But if you leave me here, and with every opening of the door I thought I might come out, I might be released, or I might not, that's a very difficult, very trying situation. Get people, put them in Guantanamo Bay, and they are not tried, they are not sentenced to anything, they're just there. After some time, the individual feels that he's forgotten, and everything there tells you that. And one of the major pressures that are put on people who are political prisoners, etc., detainees, etc., is to convince them that they are forgotten. This is why they don't allow mail, this is why they don't allow food from homes, because these things will tell you that people are thinking about you. But if it is complete silence, after sometimes you feel that you are completely forgotten. Finished. So he is telling him, go and remind your master, remind the king that, hey, I'm here, because they put me here for some time. لا يسجننه حتى حين. And I have been here for several years, and just remind them, they probably forgot me. Here the Quran says, فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانُ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. And there are different interpretations. The translation is, Shaitan made him. Who is him? Quran didn't say. To remember either Rabbi, either his Lord or the Lord of the universe. Some commentators say that this means that Yusuf sought release and salvation by other than God when he wanted him to mention him to the king so that the king may release him, and in that he overlooked to keep asking Allah alone, because he is a prophet of God. He is held to a higher standard than all of us, and he should not have thought about that. There is another school of commentators who believe that prophets can never weaken or do mistakes, etc., and they are infallible. They say no. أنساه الشيطان ذكر ربه. This is talking about the man who was released. He forgot to tell the king about Yusuf. Whichever way, those are two schools of interpretations, and both of them have their points to argue. But the end result anyways is he was not mentioned, he was not remembered, and hey, this is real life also. People, when they are in jail, they give each other all kinds of promises. Once they are out, it is a different chapter altogether. Life takes them completely, and they forget the dark, difficult days they have been at, and they tend to forget. They wanted to forget also, because nobody wants to live in that environment anyways. So what happened? They forgot him, and he stayed few more years. Some commentators say 7 years, and I think the Bible mentioned 7 years also. But it is a long time. It's not an easy thing. The king saw a dream on his own, and the dream you probably all of you are familiar with. I don't think that we need to go into. Anyways, he saw 7 big fat cows are devoured by skinny sick cows, and he found 7 ears. He saw 7 ears, green ears of wheat that are destroyed by not so healthy grains of wheat. And it seems that the dream was so vivid in his mind that he knew that this must have a meaning. Remember, in the introduction of the story of Yusuf, I digressed a little bit to talk about the different kinds of dreams. Who remembers, raise your hand. Okay, so we repeat it. So the psychologists, as well as the Islamologists, if there is something like that, they say, let us stick with the psychologists, modern psychology. They say that some of the dreams are subconscious. You see, your subconscious speaks when you are asleep. It is released from the inhibitions, so your subconscious. And some dreams express anxieties or wishful thinking. You wish for something, and so you dream that you became the king of the world or whatever. Or you have anxieties, so you always dream like you are lost or you are whatever. And they say some other dreams are hodgepodge of dreams that we could not classify it under anything. Dreams happen at a certain phase of sleep, which is, call it the rapid eye movement sleep, when the eye oscillates. And it shows on the brainwave studies. You can know that this is a dreaming period. We all dream almost all the night, but we retain in the memory only some. And they believe that dreaming is a very essential part of mental health, because if you don't dream, your subconscious and your anxieties are not released. So something bad will happen to your brain. And I think this is the problem with people who are deliberately deprived of sleeping. It's not fatigue. It is you deprive the brain from discharging and recharging. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, some of them acknowledged. He said there are certain dreams, that's a category that was not mentioned by the psychologist, they are from God. In other words, God is telling you something in a special language. And this doesn't have to be that you are good or you are bad, or you are even a believer or not a believer. But God sends messages to people in a certain language. And some dreams that the Prophet ﷺ said, تحدث نفس, yourself is speaking to you, which is what the psychologists put under the subconscious and the anxieties, etc. And some dreams, he said, أضغاث أحلام, just mumbo jumbo, hodgepodge of things, which is the category that they did not classify. So actually, we acknowledge that there are certain kind of dreams that God is telling people something. Unfortunately, we don't know which one is which. And there are people, mercenaries, who exploited this desire and made a profession out of it. I collect money and I tell you what your dream means. And there are books written since the 300 years Hijri. There are books written to decipher and elucidate the meaning of certain dreams, which is, I think, in my humble judgment, it is nonsense, because it is so individualized. Each individual will, whatever. But anyways, when the king saw that thing, he was very disturbed and collected his people in the palace and said, this is what I saw, tell me what it means. They said, jump to the easiest conclusion, أضغاث أحلام. This is a hodgepodge of thing that doesn't make any sense. وما نحن بتأويل الأحلام بعالمين. We don't, this is not our cup of tea. Here the guy remembered, the guy who was offering the drink to the king remembered. And he said, guess what? There is a guy thrown there in jail. He's really very good at that. Let us ask him. So just this very simple conversation in the cell 8 or 9 or probably 10 years ago or more came to work at that moment of history. And so the king told him, go and ask him. Let us. He went to him, Yusuf wa ya Siddiq, this is a different language, my buddy, Yusuf, my buddy, he remembered him at last. And you are not only my buddy, you are the truthful one, the one who tells the truth, the Siddiq. Tell us, and he told him that the dream, so that I can go back to people and make them know what it means. Yusuf here gives him a plan. He told him for 7 years, you cultivate your land, but don't use all of the crop. Keep some of it. Store some of it. And what you leave it in its shells so that it does not get corrupted, and store it. Except what you really need to eat. Then after 7 years like that, there will come 7 years where the crop will be completely destroyed. And people who study Egyptology and things say yes, for Allah Alam, they say for 7 years the Nile was so low. The rains that fell in Africa was not in abundance enough. You know, Egypt is completely dependent on that river. So when the 7 years come that there is no crop, you take what you stores and use it to fulfill the needs of the people. So he's giving a very good economic plan, which is in the most sophisticated economy. They say try to predict and depend on saving when things are good, so that you can use the savings when things are bad. Then there will be a year where people will be saved and they can go back again and squeeze the crop and make wine, etc. Luxury will happen. This is a prediction with the plan of how to deal with it. So he's offering a complete plan of economic salvation to Egypt at that time. Let us go. When they told that to the king, he was extremely impressed. And he said, bring me that guy. And here will be the next lesson that we learn from the story. Just imagine if any one of you is thrown in jail innocently for unknown period of time, stays there for 10-15 years for no crime that he committed, was so desperate, I wish if someone remind them about me. Then they come to him with the good news, hey, free at last. The king wants to meet with you. Here comes the dignity that ought not to be compromised or given away under any circumstances. We find him refused to go out. He said, go back, ask them about the women who cut their hands, about this story, this scandal, before I even consider coming out. So he decided at this very moment, and this is the real test of the gigantic personality, that any one of us, if they say you are relieved, you will jump of joy and will run and will go to the king, and as they do in our days, they go first and write their name in the book of honor or سجل التشريفات, expressing their gratitude to the king that he bestowed on him this great favor, that he jailed him for 15 years and decided to release him. The only one I saw breaking this rule in an interview between Nelson Mandela and Ted Koppel, and Ted Koppel told him, aren't you grateful that they gave you your freedom after the new regime gave you this freedom after all these years in jail? He said, I'm not grateful at all. They ought not to have put me in jail to start with. This is the dignity of a statesman, because his dignity is the dignity of his people, is the dignity of the principle he is representing, and of the philosophy he is speaking for. And this is exactly what Yusuf said here. He said, no, go back. I'm not coming with you. Ask them, clear my name first. When you clear my name, I'll come out of jail. Otherwise, if I am tarnished like that, heck with it. I'll stay here. And this is one of the very profound lessons in this story that we just overlook. You cannot appreciate the stories until you put yourself in the shoes of the person that's the story is about, and put yourself in the historical context. And definitely the jails at that time, I'm sure, were not a very pleasant jails. It must have been very ugly, and for so many years, a man who goes a young man and now he becomes an old man, spends the best years of his life in something like that. Nonetheless, when they came to him with the good news, he said, no, I'm not taking it. ارجع إلى ربك فاسأله ما بال النسوة اللاتي قطعن أيديهن إن ربي بكيدهن عليم. He knows what they did. So don't just throw me in jail and they're going to take me out of jail. Who do you think I am? Go and ask first and come back to me. Let's go to the next one. So he goes and he obviously opened the case again, using the modern language, and investigated the case again, and asked them what happened with when we tried to your affair with Yusuf, when you tried to seduce him. They said, Hasha lillah, we fear God, Allah protect us, we never knew anything bad about him. So the situation changed now from what should be his punishment but to be put in jail to we didn't know anything bad about him. They changed the testimony. The witnesses changed the testimony. When the case was reopened, here the woman, after all these years, whether it is out of piety, out of consciousness, or out of love to Yusuf, she woke up at last and she said, now the truth is clear, I am the one who seduced him and he is telling the truth. So Yusuf now is vindicated. After all these years, he is vindicated by the testimony of the witnesses and by the confession of the woman who accused him. Let us go next. She is still talking. ذلك ليعلم أني لم أخنه بالغيب وأن الله لا يهدي كيد الخائنين. This is the woman talking, And here again, one of these situations of the Quran. This is so that he knows that I did not betray him. Whether he is indicating her husband, so that her husband knows that no complete act happened, or she is talking about Yusuf, that after all, I did not continue betraying him. We really don't know. And each group of commentators also is having their commenting on that. And Allah will not guide those who are not trustworthy and who betray. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. I do not vindicate myself. I have no claims about my righteousness whatsoever. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. The nafs yourself can order you to do something bad. إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. Except to those who God sheds His mercy on them. Then she, in a very tender way, إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah is all forgiving, of merciful. So we see here great sense of remorse, great sense of repentance. I did something wrong. I will not be arrogant to keep denying it. He is right. I am the one who did it. And Allahu Ghafurun Rahim. Here the king says, bring him to me, and we'll continue the story next time, and inshallah I'll try to conclude